Even in the strict realm of military conduct, the secret report has lost all credibility. According to Khrushchev, Stalin paid no attention to the warnings coming from many directions regarding the imminent invasion and went irresponsibly toward disaster. What is there to say about this accusation? Even the information coming from a friendly country can be wrong. For example, on June 17, 1942, Franklin Delano Roosevelt warned Stalin of an imminent Japanese attack that never materialized. 45 Especially in the lead-up to Hitler's aggression, the USSR was forced to navigate around enormous diversion and disinformation operations. The Third Reich was determined to make it appear that the gathering of troops in the East was aimed only at camouflaging the crossing of the English Channel, and this seemed very possible after the conquest of the island of Crete. The entire state and military apparatus is mobilized, Goebbels notes with satisfaction in his diary, to stage the first great round of misdirection in Operation Barbarossa. Thus, 14 divisions are transported to the west. 46 On top of this, all the troops stationed on the Western Front were placed on the highest state of alert. 47 Nearly 2 weeks later, the Berlin issue of Völkische Beobachter published an article that indicated that the occupation of Crete was a model for the coming settling of accounts with England. A few hours later the journal was censored with the aim of giving the impression that it had betrayed secret information of great importance. 3 days later Goebbels wrote in his diary, "The English radios announce that our maneuvers against Russia are only a bluff, that behind them we seek to hide our preparations for the invasion." 48 In addition to this disinformation campaign, Germany spread rumors according to which the military maneuvers in the East were aimed at pressuring the USSR, eventually resorting to an ultimatum so that Stalin agrees to the revision of the German-Soviet Pact and to export greater quantities of grain, petroleum and coal which the Third Reich lacked, involved in a war with an unpredictable outcome. They therefore wanted to give the impression that the crisis could be resolved with new negotiations and additional concessions on Moscow's part. 49 The British intelligence services arrived at that conclusion and the military, as late as May 22, warned the Minister of War, "Hitler still hasn't decided to pursue his objectives either by persuasion or by force of arms." 50 On June 14 Goebbels writes with satisfaction in his diary, "Overall, they still believe in the bluff or in the attempted blackmail." 51 It's also important not to underestimate the disinformation campaign carried out on the other side and initiated 2 years earlier. In November of 1939, the French press published a fabricated speech in which Stalin had revealed a plan to weaken Europe, encouraging a fratricidal war in order to Sovietize it later. There are no doubts about it, this was a forgery that sought to unravel the pact of German-Soviet non-aggression and redirect the Third Reich's expansionist fury to the east. 52 According to a much-circulated legend of history, on the eve of Hitler's aggression, London had warned Stalin without success, for Stalin, as to be expected of a dictator, only trusted in his counterpart in Berlin. However, while Great Britain informs Moscow of information related to Operation Barbarossa, they spread rumors about an imminent USSR attack against either Germany or territories occupied by it. 53 Their interest in making inevitable, or in precipitating as quickly as possible, the German-Soviet conflict is both evident and understandable. Then there's the mysterious flight by Rudolf Hess to England, clearly motivated by the hope of reconstructing the West's unity in the struggle against Bolshevism, and thereby putting into motion the program described in Mein Kampf of an alliance and solidarity between the Germanic nations in their civilizing mission. Soviet agents abroad informed the Kremlin that the number 2 in the Nazi regime took the initiative with the full agreement of the Führer. 54 Moreover, personalities of particular importance in the Third Reich continued believing until the end the theory that Hess had acted at the encouragement of Hitler. In any case, Hitler felt the need to immediately send to Rome the Minister of Foreign Affairs Joachim von Ribbentrop for the purpose of reassuring Mussolini that Germany wasn't planning a separate peace with Great Britain. 55 Obviously, Even stronger is the concern in Moscow caused by this suspected stagecraft, especially as the British government's attitude encourages it. It doesn't exploit the capture of the deputy Führer for the purposes of getting the maximum propaganda value, something that both Hitler and Goebbels feared. Instead of this, the interrogation of Hess, as Stalin was told by the Soviet ambassador in London, Ivan Maiski, is entrusted to a supporter of appeasement. While they left the door open to an Anglo-Soviet rapprochement, the secret services of His Majesty concentrate on spreading rumors of a separate peace that is imminent between London and Berlin. All of this with the aim of adding pressure on the Soviet Union, that maybe had sought to prevent the feared alliance between Great Britain and the Third Reich with a preemptive attack by the Red Army against the Wehrmacht, and thereby strengthening England's position. 56 The Kremlin's caution and distrust is well understood. The imminent threat of a second Munich on a larger and far more tragic scale. One can also raise the hypothesis that the campaign of disinformation promoted by the Third Reich had played a role, based on the transcripts found in the archives of the Soviet Communist Party. Expecting the imminent involvement of the USSR in the conflict, in his speech on May 5, 1941, given to graduates of the military academy, Stalin stressed how historically Germany achieved victory when it was focused on only one front, while it suffered defeat when forced to simultaneously fight in the East and the West. 57 Yes, maybe Stalin had underestimated the possibility that Hitler was ready to attack the USSR. On the other hand, he knew very well that a premature total mobilization would have given the Third Reich a casus belli on a silver plate, as had happened at the start of World War I. In any case, one point is clear: even while acting with caution in a very complicated situation, the Soviet leader moved toward an acceleration in war preparations. In fact, between May and June 800,000 reservists were called up. In mid-May, 28 divisions are relocated to the western districts of the Soviet Union, while work on the border fortifications and the camouflaging of sensitive military objectives are accelerated. On the night between the 21st and 22nd of June, that vast force is placed on alert in order to prepare for a surprise attack by the Germans. 58 To discredit Stalin, Khrushchev stresses the spectacular initial victories by the invading armies, but leaves out the predictions made at the time by the West. After the dismemberment of Czechoslovakia, and the entrance of the Wehrmacht into Prague, Lord Halifax continued to reject the idea of a rapprochement between England and the USSR, resorting to the following argument: it didn't make sense to ally with a country whose armed forces were insignificant. On the eve of Operation Barbarossa, or at the moment when it's unleashed, the British Secret Services had calculated that the Soviet Union would be liquidated in 8 to 10 weeks. The advisor of U.S. Secretary of State had predicted on June 23 that it would all be over within 1 to 3 months. 59 Moreover, the lightning breakthrough by the Wehrmacht, as observed in our days by an illustrious scholar of military history, is easily explained by geography. The width of the front, 1,800 miles, and the absence of natural obstacles gave the aggressors immense advantages for penetration and maneuvers. Despite the colossal dimensions of the Red Army, the relation between its forces and the territory was so unfavorable that German mechanized units could easily find opportunities to indirectly maneuver into the adversary's rear. In addition, remote cities where roads and railways converged offered the aggressors the possibility of targeting alternative objectives, leaving the enemy in the difficult situation of having to predict the advance's real direction and where to face one challenge after the next. 60